Have you ever wondered why you're not getting the social media followers that you want? Or maybe you're doing branding for your company or branding for the employer that you work for, and you're just not getting the followership that you want. Or maybe you've never posted on social media, but you know you need to. This is the podcast for you. Today, I interview Robert Courtney. He's a social media and branding expert. He has started multiple companies successfully, and he has a very large following on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And today we're going to be talking about social media, specifically how can you leverage social media to scale your business?
It is important to create elements of branding. It's just not as important for it to only be visual or always be visual. Minimum, you should be posting twice a day across all the platforms that you're active on if you want to see any type of traction on those platforms.
So if you're looking for answers to questions like what platform is best, how many times should I post a week, how do I communicate my branding identity through social media to my clients, this is the podcast that you're going to want to watch in full. Before we jump into today's podcast, back in December, I started this podcast and was super excited to have people on the show, but I very quickly got bogged down with all of the editing that happened after the fact. And so I was introduced to a company called NVN Creates. They are the company that I now use that edits all of my podcasts. So if you're looking for an editor and you're looking for a team of people that is qualified, I trust them. I think that you should at least give them a shot. If you're interested in talking to them or getting a quote on their work or seeing examples from their work, I included the link in the description below. That's enough talk before the podcast. Let's jump into the conversation I had with Robert earlier today. I also will include timestamps in the comment section, so if you want to jump to certain parts of our conversation, you can do that as well. Hey guys, welcome back to the Dylan England Show. I'm your host, Dylan England. I have my guest, Robert Courtney, with us. Thank you for coming on the show today, brother.
Absolutely,
guys.
Man.
I am excited, nervous for today's show. I've been looking forward to this show for about 2 weeks since we planned this. Robert is an accomplished entrepreneur. He started a clothing line. He started a marketing agency. He's co-founder of Detroit Con, correct? I'm saying
Creator
that right?
Con.
Creator Con in Detroit. This man is, he's a shoe connoisseur too.
I am. No,
Jordan
1.
Jordan
only.
1, over 100 pairs or something like that. I saw.
Close
to 100 pairs. This man is awesome. Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about branding, everything you need to know about social media, branding, if it comes to personal branding or business branding. And this is the guy I specifically targeted to have on the show because he knows his stuff. So you're definitely going to want to stay for the whole podcast today. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
So I guess just right off the bat, I want to know who is Robert? The people that are listening on the show, who is Robert? Why should our listeners listen to you? Why should I know I've done the research. I've stalked you on Instagram a lot, and I've loved your stuff. But who's Robert? Give me a little bit of your story, maybe a little bit about Unique, your marketing agency, maybe about Creator Con, and then we'll jump into the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. I think you are doing an amazing job, and there's absolutely no reason to be nervous. So let's go ahead and get rid of that nervousness. Who is Robert? Robert is a very naturally competitive individual who has a very deep want and need to make everyone feel better, right? And so those are very two opposite things. And I think the intersection of that is just this constant battle to do great things and to help other people along the way. My story is an interesting one. I probably worked 15, 16 corporate jobs or 9-to-5 jobs in a very structured environment. FedEx, Buckeye Pipeline, Spirit Airlines, Home Depot. My first job was at Burger King. And so I say those things to say I've tasted a lot of different environments. And so in those experiences, what I really learned was I'm not a 9-to-5 guy,
Yes.
right? I naturally identify patterns very well. And as I evolve in a business capacity, I'm realizing that understanding patterns is a skill set. Like, it is something that doesn't come natural to everybody. And I thought it did, like, all these years. And then maybe 3-4 months ago, I went to hear Tony Robbins. Yep. And Tony Robbins is somebody that I've known, but I've never really followed him. And apparently, one of his major things that he speak about is just the ability to understand patterns and to recognize patterns in life and people and yourself, etc. And so one of my patterns that I recognized very early, probably in my early 20s, was that every time I would go into a new job, I would be there for 5 to 6 months. I would be excited about the job for about 5 to 6 months. And then after the 6-month period, my excitement would wane, which means now my effort and energy on the job is dying down. My ability to show up on time and be consistent is leaving, right? And so as I'm noticing this pattern, I don't know what the solution or the answer is, though. Like, it's like, am I going to live the rest of my life being excited about a job for 5 or 6 months, right, and then have to switch to a brand new job? And so that stressed me out. Like, that gave me anxiety when I was younger, like just trying to figure out life. And it's just, at the end of the day, we are in search of a feeling, right? Like, we're trying to understand the purpose of life and how do we become successful. And as a young person, as an immature person, as a person that hasn't experienced a lot of business or environments that made sense, it's stressful because it's like, why are we here? Like, I don't want to have anxiety every day. And then, do I even identify it as anxiety? Like, I just have this uneasy feeling in my stomach that I can't get rid of when I wake up every day and I know I have to be at work at 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock and I'm stressed about it, or, I feel unmotivated or not happy, even maybe depressed. And so that became kind of my resolve, was to remove this feeling in my stomach that I felt on a very regular basis. And then I landed what I thought was my job that I would retire from, which gave me a feeling of excitement that I never had experienced up to this point. It's maybe 2003, 2004, a company called Buckeye Pipeline, and they gave me an amazing package to come work for them, company vehicle, pension, 401k. I'm 22 years old, right? And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is we made it. We've made it, right? And so I worked that job for a year and a half. I was able to purchase my first home. I was able to purchase a brand new vehicle. I was dating a girl at the time. I'm looking at rings to possibly propose. Like, life feels kind of good. I got past the 6-month mark and I was still feeling a little motivated. Right? I broke the pattern to some degree. Yeah. And so I'm like, this is it. And then 2 years into that job, I get laid off. They let me go. Right? So it was one of those things where I thought I broke the pattern and I thought I was on this path that made sense for me at the time. And then when they fired me, essentially that's what happened. They said they let me go, but they fired me. Yeah. It created a new thought. And the new thought was, how could you ever allow another human to control your fate? Like, you are basically at the disposal of the company that you work for. And no matter how much time, energy, intention, money, no matter what you do, at any moment that person can decide, we don't need you. Yep. You have served your time here and they can let you go. So I decided in that moment that I would never allow a company to be in control of my livelihood. And that was the birth of this entrepreneur that's sitting in front of you. that basically decided to take my life into my own hands. And what changed everything was my first day working as a barber, because becoming a barber was the only thing that I knew I could do to generate quick money for myself, to replace the revenue that was coming. The first day working inside that barbershop and making money that I was completely in control of, and then not having a time frame, right? And I never forget, I remember going into the shop, cutting hair, looking at the clock. It's like maybe 11, 12 o'clock. And I remember looking at the clock again. It was like 7 p.m. And it was like, wait, what? Pocket full of money. Time didn't exist. Like, time just evaporated. And it was like, I've spent my life searching for this feeling. And finally, I had a taste of it. Like, I didn't even really know how to put it in words, but I finally had a taste of what I desired. And then it was now, okay, I have to really manifest and nurture and understand this feeling that I just felt. And so I went into like super self-discovery. And
how old were you when you were doing this?
This was 24, 23, 24.
So barbershop. And then at what point were you like, so you feel the feeling? I mean, I thought like, it's like the entrepreneur feeling. You feel the hunger. You're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I eat what I kill. That makes sense to me. The harder I work, the more I make.
Yes.
Like, that makes sense to me. That's the entrepreneurship mindset. So that was your taste of it at the barbershop. At what point did you go, man, I love cutting hair, but I feel like, there's something else.
Yeah. Well,
and what was that next thing?
Yeah. So when I experienced that feeling, that really opened my eyes to this idea of entrepreneurship, which I didn't know. That word entrepreneurship in 2003, 2004 was code for drug dealer. It was code for like, you did something that you didn't want people to know about.
I'm an entrepreneur.
Right? I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I didn't understand it. It had negative connotation to it. What I did know was there was something to working for myself, right? And so my path became, my challenge became, how do I maximize this opportunity and then take it to the next level, which the next level in that environment was becoming a barbershop owner. And so I started to explore the idea. I looked for places to like open my own place. And then the stars they started to align a little bit. And the owner of the shop at the time was considering stepping away. She was considering taking a back seat, going to another place, because she didn't like managing all these different personalities in her shop. Collecting booth rent in Detroit is not an easy thing.
Nope, it's not.
So I literally just presented a proposal to her. Like, you know what if I partner with you? I'll handle, the booth rent and doing some of the things that you don't want to do. And you can just help me kind of grow into an owner, et cetera. And so that was kind of the start. And after a year of working with her, I realized really quickly that I didn't like being partners with anybody. Because I had a certain way that I like to do things, and it just created a stressful dynamic. And then 2, I realized I didn't want to open up any more barbershops. Like, being a barbershop owner was not for me for a lot of different reasons. That's a different conversation. But ownership in general, being able to now be the person that dictates how the company grows or the barbershop grows, creating the environment that I felt was the environment I wanted to be a part of. All those things became super interesting. And then I'm also in this major like self-discovery mode. I'm reading books. I'm understanding philosophies. I am exploring my own personal growth, right? Which for any entrepreneur, I feel like if you are just starting out, exploring yourself is probably 80% of the game. Right? Like the physical things you have to do for the actual business and the space that you're in, it's important, but it's like 20%. It's like when they talk about a professional basketball player, everybody's good. Like every person that makes it to the NBA is good. But why do guys end up out of the league in like less than a year? Like why do guys get cut? You know, like highly recruited #1 talents end up on the streets. Like why does that happen? Because it's mental, right? It's like you have to mentally be able to understand and navigate things, and your physical capabilities follow your mental, not the other way around. You know, so I feel like it's important to develop a mental capacity, and the only way to develop that is through research and through listening and reading and talking and mentorships and coaching. And if you can build a foundation that can handle what comes next, then your growth and your trajectory is going to continue to go up.
Yeah, that's so well said. I mean, that's why I created the podcast, was self-reflection is, I think, it's undervalued today, because if you look at a lot of the content that's on YouTube and TikTok, and everyone's showing you their Bugattis and showing you
Right.
the money and blah, blah, but there's very little bit about the inside look into who you are, to your soul, to what you believe to be true. And so that's why I started the podcast. So there's 3 areas of the podcast, and it has to fit our mission statement. The guests have to fit these 3 things. Number 1, are they an entrepreneur? They don't have to fit all 3, but one of the 3.
Right.
Are they an entrepreneur? Number 2, self-improvement. Is this person going to help our guests listening on the show? Are they going to help you be a better person? And 3 is lifestyle improvement. Is the guest that I'm talking to going to help us understand, help me understand how to have a better lifestyle, whether that's taking care of your body, whether that's dressing in a certain way that makes you feel confident, whether that's living in a place that gives you the confidence to go and do better. I mean, that's really what it's about. And so I love the fact that you mentioned that, because that is literally why we started the Dylan England Show.
That's phenomenal.
So,
I mean, I think
I appreciate that a lot.
You have obviously a understanding of, like, you've been doing it to some degree for a while. I think there's levels, right? Like, I'm working as a self-employed barber for a barbershop owner. So I'm working in a capacity where I manage my own schedule. I dictate the amount of time that I put toward my craft. But at the end of the day, the owner of the barbershop could still close the doors to the barbershop, which then puts me back, in a bad position, right? So my entry into it was kind of like a first step, like I wasn't fully immersed into entrepreneurship, but I was at a starting point. And for me, it was perfect because I'm coming from all, traditional 9-to-5 scenarios. And that's not an easy transition. Like, I honestly feel that the biggest the difference between an entrepreneur and someone who works in a traditional 9-to-5 setting is so huge. Like those two people are rarely compatible.
Dude.
Like, they rarely understand each other,
Dude, like, I mean, I'll talk on that for 2 seconds. I mean, we hire people for the agency that have worked 9-to-5 their whole life, and all of a sudden I say, hey, you set your schedule. You're your own boss. I'm here to train and tell you how to do this insurance thing, but it's up to you to be successful.
They're lost.
And the first week, we had to realize that we actually need to create for them a 9-to-5 structure, even though they're a self-employed person, because the average person can't handle it.
They can't.
Because they don't know what to focus on. They don't know where to start.
It's the
and it
mental,
goes back to mental.
it's the
they don't know
mental
how to
capacity.
handle objections, and all of a sudden. And so, dude, I think that the advice you just gave that I hope our listeners take away is this. If you're working at a 9-to-5, and a quick little sidebar.
Good.
I had this conversation with a previous guest. When we talk a lot about entrepreneurship on this show, I want people to understand that we're not bashing 9-to-5 people. There's something very honorable of being a man. We talked about being a protector earlier and a provider. If God has called you to be a 9-to-5 worker, and you love it and you're fine with that, you understand the risks of being laid off, you understand that stuff, by all means, go for it 100%. Go home, be with your family at 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock every night. That's fine, right? But there's some of us that it doesn't sit well. That feeling of like, I want to give more. I want to do more. The advice you just gave is perfect. Look for careers that start off with a little bit of a hybrid model for you. Barbershop, insurance agent, real estate agent. Those are careers that you're 100% commission. It's up to you to make the money, but you have a little bit of a level of support there for you. And if you want to jump into being an entrepreneur, a business owner, I mean, by now Robert started a couple different things. It all started by him being a barbershop worker, 1099 worker, booth rent, paying his booth rent every month, and then all of a sudden he's where he is now. So that's great advice, man. That's really good advice.
And I think, I mean, just to kind of go to your point of there's nothing wrong with working 9 to 5, like, you know, it all goes back to self-awareness, right? It goes back to being true to who you are. Like, what's in the pit of your stomach? In the pit of my stomach was this cloud that was over my head. I've been an entrepreneur since I was probably 7 years old, 8 years old. Like, I was bred and born, like, that is who I am to my core, right?
You didn't even know it.
And I didn't know, right? And if you don't have anybody to cultivate that spirit, if you don't have parents who are entrepreneurs or individuals in your life that can identify certain characteristics of your personality at a young age, then there's no way for you to put that into into verbiage that that person or kid or child can understand. And so, you know, it's different for everybody's different. You know, I look at my daughter who's 6 and she has all the personality traits of an entrepreneur. I look at my son, he is not. Like, he is not. Like, he doesn't, and I'm not saying he won't eventually evolve or become that,
but that natural, exactly.
Yes, like all the things that he does. As a kid, I was the absolute laziest child you can ever imagine. Like, I hated making my bed. I hated getting my clothes together. When my mom would tell us we had to clean up on Saturdays, it like did something to my body. Like, I hated it, right? And so, like, there was very identifiable things that if I right now was looking at a child who was behaving the way that I was behaving, I would instantly say, you put me in front of a notepad and a pencil and some coloring pencils, I will draw for days. You put me on a basketball court, I would play for days, right? Like, the things that I loved, I obsessed over. Like, I went so beyond and over the top. The things that I hate, I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and I don't care what you say. I'm going to fight you on it. And I don't care if you're my mom or my dad. I'm going to give you resistance at 7 because I hate it that much, right? Like, these are entrepreneurial characteristics, you know, that I show very early. So I just say that to say, every person is different. You have to be self-aware, understand your DNA. And then when you get into environments that are not ideal, you have to think through, how do I leverage this environment to sharpen the skill sets that I want to improve on so that I can grow and become better to evolve into the person that I want to be. And that's the thing that people don't do. Like, a lot of times we'll be in an environment where it's like, I don't like this situation, but you don't have money coming in any other place. You have a bill, you have a rent that's due, you have bills that's due. And then you say, screw it, and you walk away. And now you're in a 10 times worse situation you were in before, you know? And so, like, my thing is, yes, I'm in a barbershop. I don't like the idea of owning more barbershops, but I'm going to do this for the next 4 or 5 years because there's skills that I am developing that's going to make me an incredible business owner. So I sucked it up, and I used that time to really understand people. My ability to diagnose a person in a very quick amount of time is at an extremely high level strictly because of my learning ground in the barbershop. Like, you see so many different types of people, so many different backgrounds, and your success is predicated 100% on your ability to connect with the person before they sit in your chair. You know, so now when I do business with business owners for my current things, I know who you are. Like, before you open your mouth, I have assessed you, and I know exactly where I need to take this conversation to emotionally connect. Now, whether we align on a business level, that's based on what you're struggling with and then whether I can provide the solution.
Correct.
But on a human level, 99% accuracy in identifying things, because every human can connect with every human if each human is in a open in a space where they're open-minded enough to allow that to happen. It's just, will we find our commonalities in a quick amount of time?
Correct.
You got a daughter, I got a daughter. I know what you went through. I can speak to that. So we're connected, right? And it's, you know, it's a business skill set. Just being human is a business skill set that people neglect.
Oh man, I mean, I'm working on a series. I don't know if you're gonna call it a training series, whatever, but like, sales is psychology. And if you can't diagnose within 10 seconds the personality of the person you're talking to, you're going to have an uphill battle the whole time. And a lot of times, like, for what we do is we put like animal traits by certain people. So when we train people, they're either an eagle, an owl, a dove, or a parrot. Eagle is type A personality. They want to be in charge. Bottom line is their most important thing. They're like what you think of like a leader, but like an aggressive leader, right? Dove is like, this loves everybody. They're, you know, caring for people is on their whiteboard. So if you can figure out a way, there you go. A parrot just talks. They just want to have a good conversation. They want to have fun. They're the life of the party. They're the one on the dance floor, like twerking with their shirt off. Like, that's a parrot. You know what I mean? And then you have an owl. They just want numbers. They want statistics. And that's what we teach our agents, is like, in the first 10 seconds, you need to know if that business owner you're talking to is an eagle, owl, dove, or parrot. And
or the last one you left out.
Okay, go ahead.
A chameleon.
Ooh. I haven't even done that yet.
Yeah, a chameleon can be all those things.
Then you're screwed. No, I was kidding. Then you're like, I don't know where to go in this conversation.
No, well, for the person.
Yeah.
But like, my personality is, I am literally, for anybody that knows me, every one of those animals that you just named, right? And it's like, I became that. I wasn't that. But through that barbershop experience, I became that, because after you adapt to so many different scenarios, so many different times, and then when it becomes your direct line to your livelihood, you literally have no choice.
Your personality traits change too.
Yeah,
I came into this business as a dove, and I just loved people and I cared for people. And then my eagle ate my dove. Over 5 years of being screwed over by people, that now I still love people, don't get me wrong, but there's a little bit more eagle there now. That's like, hey, I don't want to be screwed over. I'm going to make sure we do everything.
And I don't think there's nothing wrong with being, you know, a combination of multiple things. You know, it's a time and a place for all of those different qualities. And I think the true leader can evaluate which aspect of his personality needs to come into play at that particular moment.
Yeah, I agree. So I think, dude, to close out this segment for the people that are listening, and a lot of our listeners take notes, is this: look at yourself. Be self-aware. If you're not happy with where you're at right now, if you're failing in business, maybe it's not the circumstances. Maybe it's you.
It's always you.
And my wife and I literally had this conversation, because right now on one of our insurance business, it's been a drag for me. And she's been asking me, hey, do you want to quit? Do you want to leave? And I told her exactly what we just talked about. And I'm like, I don't think it's the career. I think it's me. And I need to figure out why first before we make any type of career decisions.
See?
And so
that right there is, I feel, a very strong sign of a leader. It's the ability to take responsibility for everything that's wrong. Right? So things aren't working out well. You have all these people around you. You're in a certain space. You're dealing with certain types of customers. It's very easy to point the finger at all these different things, it's really hard to say, it's me.
Yeah.
I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I need to fix something. And when you start to do that, I feel like it changes everything.
Yeah.
Because now it's you creating this mental resilience of, once you dig yourself out of a hole, or you fix something internally and it changes your surroundings, now every single time you get into a jam or you get into a bad circumstance, it's easier to fix it because you know it's like all connected to you.
Yeah, correct. Dude, man, we could go on the leadership thing for a little bit. And honestly, if you're listening, this is really good, man. It's not always your circumstances. This drives me nuts. I see so many people I talk to and I coach. I always blame my circumstances a lot of the times. And it's what you said earlier. It's what can you learn from the circumstances you're in to help you be better. And man, if you're not enjoying this conversation right now, what are you doing? This is awesome.
We got to double down on that, man, because
this is great.
I got to just throw one more thing in there. Like, to elaborate on it, it's not, it could be your circumstances, right? Like, I just want to be clear on what I'm saying. It could be your circumstances. It could be a person in your staff that's the cancer. Yeah. It could be those things. But what I'm saying is, even if it is, take responsibility for it. Yep. Like, still make it on you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you're on a basketball team, and I'm like huge with sports analogies. Let's do it, man. Right? So like,
I might be fat, but I told you on the phone.
I know you're a shooter.
Player. I'm a shooter, baby. Let's go.
If you're on a basketball team and the basketball team is struggling, how easy is it to say, well, this guy is not playing hard. This guy is not playing his position. He's not setting screens good. He never passes. The coach is not doing, like, it's so many people and things that you can blame. But it's really hard to be like, this is on me. I have to be better. I have to change my approach. I have to shoot better. I have to hustle hard. Like, when you just start putting all the blame on yourself, not only does it galvanize the people around you, because it's like, I know I screwed up, but he's still taking the responsibility for us not progressing or being better. I just think it's another level. And when you get to that level, like, it starts to change, your ability to attract the right people and the right environments to you.
Yeah. My dad is a Christian school principal, and he taught me my whole life what a lot of people call leadership. He said real leadership is something called servant leadership.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to be a servant. And if you're not a servant,
or be willing to be a servant.
And that's what creates followership.
Yep.
And followership is what you need to scale.
Before you lead, you have to learn how to follow.
Yeah, man, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I think just to kind of like piggyback on one more thing that you said, and then I want to get to some of the questions from our listeners. If someone is in a circumstance or a situation right now, I'll give you my story. Let me give you a quick, we'll do a little examination on Dylan's life.
Okay.
Started doing insurance in 2018, right? Never did insurance before. Went to college for business in South Carolina. I did 2 years traveling around the country, going to different churches, playing Irish music, and doing kids programs. Okay. 2 years from Vermont to Florida, different Sunday. It was like a revival thing that we did for churches. So awesome, great experience.
Got it.
Got done with that. Had a guy from Aflac be like, "Hey, I'm hiring." Moved to Michigan. I said, "Hey, I'll follow you." We started a small church plant, or helped a small church plant. That's what brought me and my wife here. It was awesome. Loved it. Love sales. Absolutely. Every morning, what you were talking about, barbershop, of like, dude, you wake up, it was like 6 a.m. and it was 6 p.m. You're like, dude, this is awesome. Like, you didn't feel like you were working.
Right.
And then the first 2 years were great. My wife actually quit her job to come work with me full time.
I read this story actually.
Yeah, you did. Oh, cool. Yeah. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then since COVID, man, I have been in this, like, I haven't felt the joy of sales for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And so part of that has been like, okay, well, maybe sales isn't for me. And so then it's like, okay, I should quit, and maybe I should just get a 9 to 5, and maybe I should get this. But then every time I think that, I'm like, no, like, I know I'm an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I know for those 2 years, those were the most fun days of work in my life. So the question is, I know people experience this. You feel that burnt out feeling.
Right.
How would you recommend somebody to like look at what's going on, look at your circumstance, make the best of it, and then decide if it's time to leave that circumstance or if it's time to just man up, nut up, and go kick it?
Do you want the dove answer or the eagle answer?
Let's shoot straight, baby. Shoot straight.
Yeah. So the eagle answer is, if you feel that way, you're not an entrepreneur, right? Like a true entrepreneur actually loves the rut. We love the pressure. Like we love the back against the wall feeling, like the navigating out of the issue and the problem. We get energy from the idea that our situation sucks. And now it triggers this response of, it's on me to try to navigate and get my way out of it, right? And I think what happened for a lot of people pre-COVID, economy was good. There was a lot of money floating around. And going into entrepreneurship seemed really cool and exciting. And the internet was at an all-time high in terms of being able to grow. And, people saw it as like the cool thing to do. And so during that time, a lot of people made a lot of money. Like there's real estate agents that were killing it. There's insurance agents that was killing it. Service-based businesses just in general were having record years, right? And if you talk to a lot of conspiracy theorists, they'll tell you that 2020 was really about a reset, right? Like it wasn't about the disease. It was more about...
we can get on that.
That's a whole other conversation, right? So with all that being said, it was a very unrealistic time that a lot of people was living in. And so what happened in 2020 and how it really just kind of like flipped everything upside down was the people that were doing it didn't get, if you were going into that, like I'm going to become an entrepreneur, you weren't getting a realistic perception or perspective with what entrepreneurship really is about. And if you're in that spot, I would advise to really self-reflect on the things that actually make you happy. Like for me, the feeling that I felt wasn't necessarily about entrepreneurship. The feeling that I felt was the ability to control my day. Like I can do something that generates revenue for me that still gives me flexibility to be with the kids, to be on a trip, to go to work when I choose, to leave work when I choose. Like that flexibility is really what I craved. And even as a young kid, that's my why. And even as a young kid growing up, like when I talk about my mom and I talk about my experience as a child, when my mom would call me for school to get out of bed, it would make me cringe. Like I hated it, right? And like I connect that to now. If I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and I say, I don't feel like doing nothing, I can lay there for the next 4 or 5 hours. I don't have to move. That is success. I reached that level maybe 5, 6 years ago, right? And now everything else is bonus. Like I am in a happy place because I have accomplished my childhood dream of controlling my days, right? Now everything else that happens is me literally adding it on. I don't need cars. I don't need houses. I don't need fancy things. I don't need none of that. I don't need it to have
just give me my time.
Joy, right? Like, and that's what we're really seeking. Like joy and peace of mind is really like, so I admonish like individuals like you or anyone who's in a space of just uncertainty, there has to be a self-reflection, and you can't self-reflect if you don't have the stuff in there to self-reflect with. And that's where the discovery, the books, the reading, the research, all those things come in hand. And there's so much context to this, because my ability to self-reflect is based on that 23, 24 to 29, 30-year-old Rob who was in this just extremely intensive mindset of understanding myself.
Yeah.
I was reading 2 books a month. Like I was meeting with 3 to 5 individuals a month, just trying to like understand life. And so now I've put so much in that when I am in a spot where I'm not sure, I can spend a couple hours reflecting, and I have the information subconsciously and consciously to be able to evaluate. And so for you, it's like, what brings me peace? What do I enjoy? Right? And then can I monetize or leverage those things to generate money that will take care of my family? Now, that doesn't mean that you can walk away from what you're doing, right? And that's what I was speaking about earlier.
Yep.
If you're in a situation where you feel struggle or stress, now you have to say, how can I leverage this situation, extract skills and connections and relationships that can then support what my plan is. The things that I've reflected on that I love and that I enjoy doing. And I think if you can get to that place, that's where like happiness and peace kind of lies. The back and forth is stressful because it's just uncomfortable. Yeah. But you know what everybody says. When you're uncomfortable is actually when you're growing and becoming a better version of yourself. Right? So I don't think it's impossible to evolve into an entrepreneur or to a business person or into a space that is right for you. But I just don't think that a person who has those thoughts is a natural bred. Like, I don't think you were born an entrepreneur, like where I feel like I literally came out the womb to be an entrepreneur. But I think over time, you can develop the muscles and you can develop the attributes that will make you a great, successful entrepreneur over time. Yeah.
That's a good answer. And I think for a lot of people, I think it'd be cool to do a podcast sometime of like a workshop where I either take a guest or you come back and we really break down and we do almost like some out loud self-reflection on what that would look like. That would be really cool. Yeah. I think for me, where I self-reflect the best is through prayer, for me. So when I pray, that is where I just feel that God helps me really see me for who I am, because we're deceitful. We might not really know who we actually are. And so I know I bring my faith into a lot of stuff. But like when I pray, and by praying, be like, God, like show me. Yeah. And I want to be dependent on you. Show me who I am. Right. That is where I know God has shown me a lot of stuff I need to improve, and he's going to help me improve. Absolutely. And dude, that advice was really good. So last takeaway, and then we really got to get to this next segment for time. Yeah. A good leader is one that's going to self-reflect, be humble enough to admit when they're wrong, be humble enough to make the change, and show love to their fellow followers to be like, hey, I'm changing. Yep. I'm going to call you to change with me. Yep. And I think that's just a perfect way to leave that. Yep.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Awesome, brother. So do you mind if we jump to the next segment?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. All right. So new on the podcast. This is our first time doing this. We are going to start doing Q&As from our listeners. So if you're not following us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, actually, I have a solid 6 followers on Twitter. So if you want to be the 7th, you can do that. I made it like 5 days ago, so it's great. So I put a Q&A out there, and I said, hey, I'm gonna be interviewing a brand expert and social media expert. What questions do you have? And so I have some very bare bones questions, just like, simple questions. And I have a couple more like conceptual questions. Okay. So I'm going to go through these questions real quick. So if you're just hopping on, if you're just watching this specific clip on YouTube, welcome to the channel. And let's jump into the segment of our Q&A. First question. This question comes from David. So David, thanks for this question, brother.
What's up, David?
What is the breakthrough moment that helped you know exactly what your personal brand is? And how is it different from the brands of the other companies you own?
My breakthrough moment, if I had to just point to one thing, was probably when I switched my original business Instagram that I created. It was called Brand Your Business.
Okay.
So it was a very generic kind of corporate name. And we ran a lot of content through that. And I never would see any real return, any real leads or connections that came through that activity. And so I didn't use it much, right? It was kind of like it was an opportunity for presentation on the platform. And then I started a professional page for myself with my name. And when I would put the same content on both pages, the content that was on my personal page just exploded. Like it would do way better than the Brand Your Business page. And so I'm like, and this is probably 2017, 16, 17. And so it just immediately like clicked, like we are changing in society to trust and acknowledge personal brands over business brands. And if I'm putting the energy into my personal brand, then that means they're going to follow me. Am I prepared or in a mental space to be okay with that? Like making it about me versus about my business, because up to that point I had built Unique, and Unique was very much about the team, the company, the brand. It was not about me at all. As a matter of fact, for years, people didn't even know who started Unique or who was behind it, right? And so it was a very like hard or a very black and white like switch from one philosophy to another philosophy. But I think it was in that moment when I recognized that we were getting a lot of traction using my personal brand is when I realized like I have to become my personal brand and really like dive into what that looks like.
Did you see a connection between when you started building your personal brand and then growth of your company's brand?
Oh my God, like yeah, and that's really what I'm alluding to.
Okay.
The ability to generate conversations and spark interest about what I did was 10 times what was happening when I was just pushing it as a company. And I think it's really based on what type of brand you're growing. So like with a lifestyle brand, it's not as important because, you know, people are following you for a culture. They're following you for the way you make them feel. When it comes to service-based businesses, when it comes to like self-help or strategy, things like that, then people need to know the person that's putting the plan together. And they follow the person versus following like a company that can be getting contributions from who knows, you know. So I think that plays a part into it. But
goes back to the psychology of it.
The psychology. And social media, if we're just talking about social, it's all psychology. Like the reason someone follows you today in 2023 is different than what it was in 2015, 2014. So there's a lot of who is this person? What does he do? Does he look trustworthy? Is he creditable? Like the person that decides to follow is going through this full kind of like breakdown of the individual that they're gonna now follow. Like it is a big deal, and it wasn't a big deal before.
Yeah, that's helpful. David, hope that answered your question. Next question. This is Tim. 2 questions from Tim.
Okay.
All right, so thank you, Tim, for these questions.
What's up, Tim?
All right, first question. What platforms are best for quick growth, or just to get, if I want to start social media, what's the best platforms to getting your brand out there?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that in 2 ways.
Okay.
First, stop worrying about how fast you grow. Social media isn't from a business standpoint, social media shouldn't be about growth anymore because it doesn't give you the landscape to do that. Like the algorithms are not for you to grow. They're for you to make connections. They're for you to make quality connections. And so the mindset should be quality presentation across as many platforms as you can possibly be on.
Okay.
That should be the thought process. But if you want me to answer your question based on the tools that we do have, TikTok is definitely the quickest opportunity for organic growth on the internet right now. The second fastest place is Facebook, personal page on Facebook, and that's because you can invite people and add friends. So Facebook personal pages that can then be turned into professional pages, and you can leverage the analytics and the ad tools and things like that. So I would say TikTok, Facebook, and then keep an eye on the new platforms. Lemonade, Clapper. There's a lot of new platforms. If you go into the App Store, there's platforms that are growing extremely fast, and before we know it, they'll be on our radar.
Yeah.
So,
okay, that's helpful. Follow-up question from Tim. So he's a business owner. He's like, we do some social media, but when we do it, I do it. Right. I need to delegate it though.
Yep.
What quality should I look for in a person to manage our social media?
Accountability is the number one thing. Will they do what they say they're going to do? It's important for a business owner to manage their own social for a while, though. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing wrong with that, Tim. And as a matter of fact, I would continue to do it until you just can't do it anymore. By doing it, it's going to give you the information that you need to make a quality decision on who you're bringing in. You need a person that understands your personality, a person that you connect with and vibe with, especially if it's going to be a person that's working internally. If you're going to outsource to an agency like Robert Courtney and Associates,
quick plug,
you want to look for a track record of success. You want to look for a person that can quickly assess who you are, understand your voice, and then have a proven ability to be able to emulate your voice through your content. And so those would be kind of the things that I would look at. But my quick answer is accountability is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
You just want someone who is going to do what they say they're going to do and is going to consistently put out the information and the content that you need.
I love it. I think accountability, and then to kind of add what you said with emulate, they need to be a good listener. So if you are hiring internally, is this person going to be able to emulate the brand that you want to emulate?
Exactly.
That's perfect. Yeah. I love it. All right, next question. We have a couple just unnamed, just like quick text. I didn't write their names down.
Okay.
How many times should I post on social media each week?
Minimum, you should be posting twice a day across all the platforms that you're active on if you want to see any type of traction on those platforms. But as much as you possibly can. Last month, I put out 260 pieces of content across 3 platforms.
And that's stories, reels, photos, just across the board.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and that's really Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok were the 3 platforms that I personally live on consistently. But I would say anywhere from 200 to 300 pieces of content is kind of like a sweet spot for the average individual.
All right, you heard the man. I need to step up my game. So 2 times a day, that includes stories on Instagram.
Yes.
That includes just any type of like communication out.
Yeah, honestly, 2 times a day should be. If we're including stories, you're probably at like 5 times a day, but 2 times a day at a bare minimum.
Okay, that is helpful. All right, next, we're gonna get into a little bit more branding when it comes to branding on social media. How does branding fit into your social media strategy? Does it need to all be aesthetically uniform, or follow the same general template?
Yeah.
Or is there room for a little bit of randomness?
It is a lot of room for randomness nowadays. Branding is important to make sure that people recognize you when you put out a piece of content, but it doesn't have to always be visually, right? So you can brand through message, you can brand through sound, you can brand visually, which is like the same color aesthetic, but it is important to create elements of branding. It's just not as important for it to only be visual or always be visual. Because when people think of branding, they always think about like colors and fonts and things like that. But social media has given us the ability to connect all senses, right? So we can
That's a
connect
great point.
the way we listen, we can connect the way we see, the way we internalize. And so do something consistently, but do something consistently that comes natural to you. And if finding templates and colors is stressful, then pick something else to make sure you're consistent. It could be every time your video comes on, you say the same thing. What's up, guys? It's your boy, Robert Courtney. Every time. It's your boy, Robert Courtney. Peace. Like, every time you hear me. Or What's Next by Drake. Like my videos are constantly playing the same song. You know, so people start to follow you, and then they start to like get used to similar things happening, and that's branding.
Yeah, that's a great point. Branding is not just look. Branding is also how it sounds,
Yes.
how it makes you feel. That's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next question. Are we good on? We're good on time. We're doing pretty good. Okay,
You're
cool.
good.
All right, next question. What is when it comes to platforms? So we already asked what's the best platform, but does it depend on the platform based off of the age of the demographic I'm going for my clientele? And what would you say would be a good platform for young clientele versus middle age versus old? If that makes sense.
So
or does it not matter and just post on all?
every platform has every age group and every demographic. So it just matters if you're just starting out, it's probably a better strategy to cast a wider net, right? So if we're just attempting to cast a wider net, then you will want to think about playing on a platform that's going to have more of your demographic on it. And so if it's a younger clientele, it's more likely that there's more young people on, say, TikTok. But also, the fastest growing population on TikTok is an older clientele, right? So both things should be taken into consideration. It could be you are attempting to capture a older audience, and because they are coming into this platform at a faster pace, your ability to connect with that older audience, although there's more older people, say on LinkedIn or Facebook, it may be easier to connect with them on TikTok. So I would, if I'm consulting, I would eliminate the thought process of I need to be on a certain platform for a certain demographic. I would think about putting out content that's contextual to that platform in the way that it's going to be internalized by everybody on the platform, and not think about it in terms of how old people are or who's the most people on a specific platform.
Yeah, so it's kind of like sometimes we get in our heads so much about the analytics that sometimes we just need to go fishing.
Yeah, you need to go fishing, but I think context. So you got analytics, which is like numbers and data, but you have context. A professional post that only has one layer belongs on LinkedIn. The exact same content or information won't work on TikTok, but it will work if it's delivered while you're singing, putting on makeup with a dog barking, a picture behind you, and a nice outfit on. Yeah. Right? So if you understand the context of the platform and what people respond to on the platform, then it just need to be delivered in that way.
That's helpful.
That makes sense.
That's very helpful.
Okay.
So the deliverable might look different. You're casting the wide thing, but you're not just uploading the same video to all three.
Correct.
The actual product itself might look a little different depending on what. Well, but the message is the same.
The message is the same. Yeah. That's the more important part.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Okay, we're going to jump into a little bit more of theory, brand theory. So I know this was a question that I got from also David, same big book that he wrote for questions for us.
Okay.
And when it comes to brand identity, I think the hardest part for people when they're trying to come up with their brand is their brand. What is their brand identity going to be? Right. I know I went through this a lot when I was coming up with the show. First, it was called the EIG podcast because England Insurance Group, and I was going to make it an offshoot of England Insurance Group to get myself promotion. But I'm like, dude, no one knows who EIG is. Why are you saying these acronyms? They don't make sense. Right. Then it was just called the Dylan England Podcast. Well, then I was like, well, the podcast, it's not just a podcast because there's other things we're doing too. Right. So when it comes to brand identity, what is important for people to think through before they even make their first post as they're thinking through things when it comes to coming up with their brand? Right.
I think you have to put yourself in the mindset of the audience that you're speaking to. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what's more important for me? Do I need to do something that has less barriers and it's going to be easy, Or am I trying to create something strategically that's going to make sense for the platforms that I'm planning to live on? And so depending on what you choose will kind of help you decide on the brand identity piece, right? If I'm thinking about it strategically, I'm thinking, okay, people respond to personal content more than they respond to anything, right? So that means your name or something that immediately connects them to you as an individual, which is going to give you faster organic growth. If you come up with initials or something that doesn't connect them to you and you compare that to something that's connected to a person, the personal brand or the personal connection is going to always grow faster, right? So I think those are things that should be considered, especially when you're starting from scratch. You got to think about, from a strategy standpoint and from a platform standpoint, what's going to give you the biggest opportunity to grow. If you're thinking about it from a long-term standpoint and like, I know this is going to be successful, and once I've grown 100,000 followers, or, you know, my audience is amassed to 1 million listeners, who do I want to be known as at that point, right? And if you aren't comfortable with, say, that being your name or, you know, a certain brand that you've come up with, then you might want to reconsider the starting point.
Yeah, that's good advice. Follow-up question with that. What happens when the listener is working at a company and they're the brand manager for their company? How would you recommend that? Because that person can't put their own name on their company branding, for example.
Right.
How would you recommend someone that's thinking through their branding for their employment to go on social media? Because I'm telling you, man, I have 160 companies I work with for insurance, and probably 100 of them don't do branding at all on social media. They're hiring brand managers for the first time, and the brand manager's like, I don't know where to start.
Right. Well, I think if you have an employer, you are working on behalf of the employer, right? So if your employer isn't cool with you doing things for yourself to try to help the company brand, then that's the box that you're playing in, unfortunately. And now you have to be in complete representation of the employer that you represent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, especially if that employer is a big name, you know, now I'm thinking about it differently. Is how do I leverage the credibility that this employee has to redirect some of that attention back to myself if I do want to eventually do something of my own? It's actually a great spot to be in, and a lot of people might look at it as like a roadblock or negatively, but at the end of the day, the big employers are going to have established brand recognition, you know, whereas if you're just starting out, you have, you know, a couple hundred followers or whatever. I would leverage the heck out of it because people are naturally inquisitive, right? So it's like, who is this Dylan guy that's doing a podcast for Aflac? Like, or who is this guy doing a podcast for Aflac? I'm just as a hypothetical example. And now it just immediately creates intrigue. Like, I want to go and find out who the guy is that's doing a podcast. He's actually really good. You know, so I would kind of like flip that scenario and see how I can leverage it to my advantage.
That's helpful. Yeah, I think if you're a listener here and you're working for a company, the question is your company big enough that you can utilize the credibility of that company to help promote it on social media, testimonials, you know, things like that people will be like, oh, wow. Because if there's not a personal name attached to it, some generic like, you know, blah, blah, blah's landscaping. You know, what sets apart blah, blah, blah's landscaping? Then how can you share that on social media?
100%. Right? But then if it's a company that doesn't have brand recognition, now you're still treating it like it's your company. Like that's the idea.
There you go. That's a great
Make that company your company. And then I took so-and-so landscaping from 10 followers to 10,000 followers. Through my own personal podcast or through whatever, you know, now you have to reframe that as this is your project, your baby that you're then going to be able to leverage in the future as a resume piece for things that you've accomplished.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So if you're a brand manager for a company, I think you need to have a conversation with your employer and say, hey, if I'm going to be able to do my job well for you, I need to treat this like it's my own company. And I need a little bit of freedom to do this.
Yep.
And I want you to tell me what your idea is. I want to listen. I want to emulate that, but I need to have my own personal flair on this or it's not going to work.
That's it.
And that's a really good point. So if you are a brand manager, I know we have a couple that are going to watch this podcast because they told me to let me know when it comes out.
Yep.
That's your answer.
It's interesting. Just to add on to that, I'm in the process of going into a few companies, very large, successful companies that have pushed back historically on social media use and their employees using social, even being connected to the company because they want to kind of have control of what that looks like. And I'm coming in because they're trying to move in a different direction, and they're trying to understand a way to communicate what's acceptable and what's not acceptable by the employees when they do things across their platforms.
To tie back to the brand. Okay.
Right? So I think as a brand manager, showing the initiative that you are trying to put framework in place that allows employees, leadership teams, people in a position that can bring positive attention to the company. If you can create that or assist in creating that, like you put yourself in a very, very, a really good position, because if your company's not doing it, they should be, and they need to. And very soon they're going to realize like we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And when they do, they're going to think about who was trying to create this for us already. And you kind of already have a jump on that.
Yeah. It's almost like allowing, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's almost like as a business owner, instead of putting your employees in a box, like a small, tiny box, you're widening the box. Maybe you're not.
You have all these brand ambassadors you're not even using.
You're not leveraging their personalities
Correct.
to then help promote your brand.
Correct.
And what it sounds like is I think a lot of employers are scared of their brand being tarnished by something on social media. So I could understand why there would still be guidelines, but maybe you need to loosen them a little bit and allow your, like, you hired your employee for a reason because you liked them and you thought they were going to help your company. Why wouldn't you want that same personality that you enjoy working with to other people to see that personality too?
That's it.
I love that. Cool. Quick learner, brother.
I see.
All right. Negative. Last question.
Okay.
What is the most common reason you see people fail on social media?
The most common reason people fail is two reasons, I think, that are very equal. Either they don't have the ability to stay consistent, they burn out or they get tired, or two, they are trying to create a perfect presentation when no one's actually perfect. They're scared to be vulnerable. They're scared to be their real selves. They're scared to let people see who they really are. And because of that, it's impossible to keep up with the perfect content that they're trying to put out. Those are probably like the two main reasons I see people either fall off or, I don't consider anything a fail. I consider it, a pause or a roadblock, that can still be learned from if managed successfully. But like those are two of the biggest reasons I see for lack of success though.
Yeah, and I think to kind of help add to that, just for my own working through that, because I'm like, perfectionist, I want to make quality content, right? And everyone here wants to have quality Instagram stories and quality posts and quality, but the only way to get there is to be consistent, right?
Well, no, actually, I think it's impossible to be perfect. And I think perfection is a cover up for insecurity. And I think sometimes because we're insecure or not sure or not confident in the content that we create, we position it as it's not good enough, when really it is good enough, and it's also better because our audience grows with us, right? So if it's not perfect to you, or it's not good enough for you, but you are trying to basically dictate or say what your audience wants to see, when in reality you don't know, right? Like the market decides until you post. So a piece of content that you put out that you don't feel is great, that you feel is, lacking in whatever way, may be the piece of content that blows you up and goes viral, and you don't know until you actually put it out there. And so I would say 80-20 rule. If it's 80% good, post it. 70% good, post it. For me, it's like 50%. Like if I'm 50% okay with it, it's getting posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, I think a lot of people go in these up and downs. Like I'm really going to post a lot and then I didn't see the results. So I back off a little bit in this cycle. So just being consistent and then
cover up the data.
Yeah. And just
like,
be real.
Honestly, like literally, like you think about a treadmill and you're going to run and you don't want to see the time, you put the towel over it, like put a towel over the data and head down and literally just post it. Don't worry about the results.
Dude.
And then in 3 months, like look up. 6 months, look up. Guarantee if you just post as much as you possibly can and not worry about what results come from it, guarantee you're going to 10 times whatever you're currently
dude, you're
doing.
so right. It's so hard though. I'm so bad. I'm so bad.
I see the anxiety, like do you see it rushing to his face?
Oh my gosh. Cause I'm so bad at I post a YouTube video and it's like refresh. And it's so bad. I know it's bad, guys. I know it's bad for me, but it's like you want it to do well so bad, but you're right, man.
Gotta let loose.
Learning to just post, and sure, 2 months down the line, you want to look and see what works. Yeah. You want to repeat certain things.
And that's also a different action, right?
Than just
you are using your analytics to improve yourself over time. Mm-hmm. But to refresh is a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder.
I think a lot of it.
And you told me I was okay. You told me it was okay for me to be an ego right
I'm
here.
ready, buddy.
So,
I'm ready, brother.
So I am talking very much in an ego voice because I believe you can handle it.
I'm ready, brother.
But I'm telling you, like I wouldn't say this to everybody, but I am telling you that based on what you do, if you just eliminated the idea of being good, you are trying to be Joe Rogan today.
Right.
And it's not going to happen, right? So if you eliminated that and you just put your head down and literally just create as much possible content as you can without so much emphasis on the perfection of the content, you're going to blow up so fast. But if you keep paying attention to it, you're not going to blow up nowhere near as fast. And on top of that, you're going to create stress and anxiety and pressure and all these things, right? So
and that's probably where people fall off, right?
100%.
That's where the fail comes in.
Yeah, you have a timetable in your head that you've created for yourself. No one expects you to do that. Yeah. That is your own expectation. And if you don't meet your own expectation, you're going to decide that you're not doing it no more or that this isn't for you. Same thing that you've probably done with the sales thing and the numbers that you expect to hit. Yeah. But these are all your own expectations. Like there's no penalty if you don't hit those things, right? So I think I talked about this on the live like not too long ago, and it was me deciding to play in a men's basketball league a couple weeks ago, right? And I think we talked right before I went into the league. There was a draft that was happening the week before, and I went into the draft. I haven't played basketball in over a year, right? I haven't been working out. I haven't been running drills. I haven't been doing things to prepare for that. Yet and still, in my head, I'm going to be the number one draft pick. Like I created that expectation for myself. So now I go out there, and because I'm so locked in on being the absolute best player in the gym, I play horrible.
Of course.
But I did that to myself. Like no one cared. Like it was just me saying, this is what I expect to do. And realistically, I've done nothing to put myself in a position to achieve that. So I use that as an example to say so many of our anxiety-related issues and our stresses and the things that come are so self-induced. Yeah. And they are not correlated with happiness and joy and peace and all the things that we actually desire that are real measures of success. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel your passion for this is unique. And if you just focus in on the passion of it all, show the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that you're going through as you journey into successful entrepreneurship, a successful podcast. I think all that content matters, and your listeners and your audience is going to appreciate you more for that because you gave us everything. Like you showed us the good days, the bad days, not just the successful interviews. You showed us the bad interviews and the ones that weren't good. And I think that's really the people who win. Last point, like if you think about your best influencers, I shouldn't say influencers because I hate the word influencer. Your most successful Instagram, social media personalities, believe it or not, are horrible business people. And they're horrible business people because they never set out to create businesses. They set out to make you laugh, to be funny, to entertain, to make great music. Their passion was what caused them to make art. And then the art just happened to be placed on these platforms. And it attracted a huge audience, which then forced them to become business people. The business people who want to create businesses and then decide that I'm going to use art or being funny or creating a podcast don't work.
Yeah, it's forced.
Because it's forced.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a completely different mindset. So anyway, that's all. I'm going to get off my high horse.
No, that's great. And you didn't even realize it. We tied it right back into what we were talking about an hour ago, which is self-reflection.
Self-reflection.
It just keeps bubbling up.
Full circle.
Man. Dude, that's awesome.
Full circle stuff.
Last thing. Okay. Because we got to wrap because you have a busy day ahead of you.
Yeah.
I want to talk quickly. Tell the people about Unique.
Okay.
Tell them about CreatorCon.
Okay. So Unique is an acronym for Unifying Nationalities by Encouraging Education and Knowledge. It is the name of the barbershop that I started initially talking about in this conversation, which progressed into a lifestyle brand that used fashion as the primary vehicle to expose that brand to the world. It is now the number one vendor for Fashion Nova women's category streetwear in the world, and a lot of people don't know that. We don't do as much front-facing retail things as we used to because most of our time is devoted to making sure that we're delivering for them 100%. And my partner, Kirk McClung, kind of heads that brand. I put it in his hands as I went into creating the marketing company, RCA. And so we divide and conquer. He's based out of LA. Our complete operation, we have 2 fulfillment centers in Long Beach, California, and it is going extremely well.
Wow. Congrats, man.
Thank you. CreatorCon is a new conference that we launched last year. The idea behind CreatorCon is that we are in a creator economy, and it's also tied back to what we talked about early, as far as regardless of the industry that you play in, we all have to accept the fact that if we're going to exist, we have to become creators. And I think becoming a creator ties every industry together, right? And so CreatorCon is a collective of real estate agents, hospitality, fitness, marketing, social media, all of the things that people do all coming together in one space to collaborate on ways that they can improve themselves and they can improve their brands. And the goal is to make it a very interactive environment where people can learn how to be better creators while also gathering information that's current about the industry that they're in over a course of 2 days eventually. But last year it was really a 2-day conference pushed into 1 day. This year it'll probably be another 1 day, but the goal is to grow it into a 2-day conference where we bring speakers in from all around the world to provide information and insight for different industries.
Dude, that's awesome. So if you're interested in CreatorCon, the link's going to be in the description of the podcast. It'll also be shared on my Instagram and show to Robert. I already checked out the content on the Instagram page. It's super sweet. It looked like a blast that you guys had last year.
Yeah, that was phenomenal.
You guys did a really good job of creating
November 15th.
Like
Hype.
FOMO.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I missed out on it last year.
Yes, I'm not
You're
missing
missing
it
out.
this
I'm not
year.
missing it this year. So you did a really good job with that.
Thank
If
you.
you guys are curious about it, definitely check it out. I'll link that in the description today. Closing thoughts. Let's wrap this thing up. What do you want to share? Is there any part of your story that we didn't get to? Is there any like last advice that maybe a good takeaway for the listeners?
Yeah. And that's always an interesting question because there's so much that floods my brain when people
Sorry,
say
that's probably
that.
a terrible question.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. But I would say the most important thing is be kind to yourself. Everyone beats themselves up for not accomplishing enough or not growing fast enough or not, not receiving the rewards or the money or hitting the goals that they had set for themselves. And I think if everyone would just recognize that it is a journey, right? It is necessary. It is necessary. It is a what do you call it when you're taking classes to graduate and there's classes that you have to take?
Like electives versus like your core classes or whatever?
Exactly. So there's an actual word for it though, and I can't think of the word. But basically, if you are on a journey for success, there are milestones that you have to hit.
Capstone classes.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But there are phases of that journey that have to be complete.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is failures and losses and challenges that seem insurmountable. And then you overcome those challenges, right? And then you start to realize that I needed that experience to unlock the next level, And so I say, be kind to yourself, appreciate every single moment, evaluate that moment, and realize what you were able to learn from that moment that's going to help you get to the next moment. And if you can do that, you begin to understand that success is really about the journey, which is super cliche, but it is really about the journey versus the destination.
Yeah. That's a great way to end this. I'm going to give a couple closing thoughts to our listeners, just some things that I hope you guys take away, some notes I took from our conversation, then we're going to wrap it up. I think if I could put a bow on everything, it's that if you want to be a leader, you need to be humble and you need to spend some time self-reflecting. You need to take some time to look inside. If you're not happy with whatever circumstance you're in right now, stop pointing the finger. Right? It's like the cliche thing of every time you point a finger, you have like 4 pointing back at you, 3 pointing back at you or whatever, right? Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Point at yourself. Look at yourself. See what's going on in here and in here first, and then start dissecting your circumstance. If your circumstance is bad, see what you can learn from it.
Yep.
Don't just give up and quit. You're put in that situation. God put you in that situation for a reason, and normally it's to learn a lesson. Yep. And a lot of times when we have our doors closed, we're just missing lessons throughout life. And that's a big takeaway I had today. From branding, guys, make content, make mistakes. It's okay. Don't freak out over the numbers. Yep. I was thinking of this example. Just because you post one video and it doesn't do well, that doesn't mean the video's bad. That could mean the algorithm didn't like you that day, and that's okay. You could post the same video the next day, and it gets 10,000 views. So just be consistent. Yep. You don't know which video is going to blow up. It's out of your control. Yep. Last part is this that I think is good. If you are a business owner looking to scale and looking to get on social media, allow your staff to put their personality a little bit into your brand. Don't snuff them out. And when you're trying to make a hire, if you're trying to get an in-house hire, they need to be accountable. They need to be a really good listener because they're going to be emulating you. If you're looking for someone to do the social media for you, perfect plug. Right there, Robert Courtney and Associates, RCA.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
I mean, you guys have heard it from himself. There's no plug I need to make. This guy knows what he's talking about. His team is a great team, I'm sure. Hope to meet them someday because I'm sure they're great people. If you want a quote, if you want to talk to him or his staff, I will also put that link in the description. So if you're a business owner out there, I'm going to share a lot of these on LinkedIn. And so if you want to talk to Robert, Man, he's awesome. His knowledge and experience. We talked for an hour and a half, and I feel like we didn't even get like to under the surface of the knowledge that he has. So thank you guys for listening. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, because that subscribe button means that people actually want this content. That's what that means. Like the video. If you know someone that owns a company, someone that has a brand, share this podcast out with other people, because I mean, I learned a lot. I was challenged today. I think that on this podcast, it is going to be real, because we're not perfect people. We mess up. And I think having a space that we can talk about that is what people want to hear. And so if you were encouraged today, please let me know in the comments. If you have other questions for Robert, you can follow him on Instagram, or you can put a comment on the YouTube channel. I'm sure he'll be checking it out.
Yep.
Thanks, brother, for coming on the show. Absolutely. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was fun.
Good, man.
Look
Good,
forward
man.
to next time.
We'll do it again. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.